Welcome back, folks, everybody, all of you beautiful people listening to this podcast, to another episode of Pass the Brew. I'm your host, Mark Cunningham. And on the episode today, we have Stephen Zinnerman from the Coffee Enthusiast down in North Carolina. Stephen owns his own coffee roastery and is a fantastic guy. Pumped for this conversation. Stephen and I are going to talk about sports. He's a big baseball guy. We're going to talk a little football. We're going to talk a little rugby, which is cool. And then we're going to talk coffee because that's what him and I know. So we're going to talk coffee. We're going to talk his journey in coffee and the things that he's come up against, the things he loves about the industry, the things he'd like to see change. Yeah, you're going to learn a lot. It's a great episode. Super thankful that he agreed to come on. Pumped to have him as a new friend. And I very much hope that you all enjoy this conversation. And without further ado, here we go. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Pass the Brew. I am so excited today to bring on Stephen from the Coffee Enthusiast. I've been following his coffee journey now for a little while, watching his live videos, and I was pretty much immediately like, oh, I gotta get Stephen on the podcast. So Stephen, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Man, thank you, man. It's an honor to be on, man.
Yeah, no, super excited to have you. So we talked a little bit offline just before we started recording, and thankfully Stephen is a sports guy. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and then we'll get into the coffee side of things. But even before we do that, Stephen, what are you drinking today?
I am drinking. This is Ethiopia, fully washed Beloya. It is dope. Bridge City Coffee Roasters. My guy Brandon Nelson, he's the head roaster over there, sent me this over the weekend, plus a cool little Bridge City Coffee Roasters button. So I was excited to get. I like buttons and stickers, so I was hyped to get this coffee, and I was hyped to get some swag from the shop. Man, it was dope.
I feel like everybody in coffee in one way or another loves like enamel pins, buttons, and stickers. Like my laptop is covered in coffee stickers.
Yes, I have coffee stickers probably from coast to coast all over my laptop, and I don't have any more room. I'm just gonna start putting them on top of each other.
Yeah, eventually you're like, well, you kind of want to choose the really cool ones first, but then you're like, I just want to put them all on. My water bottle's covered in them. My laptop, my old laptop is covered in them. Like it's just stickers.
I got them all over my grinder, all over my espresso machine, like just any place. My AeroPress, I got stickers all over.
Yeah, I guess stickers on the AeroPress as well.
Yeah, man,
that's sick. Well, Stephen, why don't you just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself? Like where are you at right now? Like what kind of things you like to do outside of coffee? Yeah, just give our listeners a little vibe of who Stephen is.
Man, I'm in North Carolina. I live in North Carolina right now. Right on the north side, or we call it North Fayetteville, North Carolina, right off of Highway 295. So we're about 30, maybe 40 minutes outside of Raleigh, North Carolina, the capital. And yeah, man, originally from Georgia. I'm from Augusta, a little small town in Georgia, about 2 hours outside of Atlanta. That's where I grew up mostly, but I was actually born in Beaufort, South Carolina. So we traveled a lot coming up. I lived in Kentucky. My dad was in the Marine Corps. My mom was in the medical field. So, we upped and uprooted a lot and traveled a lot and bounced around a whole lot, man, as kids. So I'm from everywhere, but I'm definitely from the South, the Southeast United States. But college grad, married. Outside of coffee is sports, man. Coffee, sports. My wife, my children. Science. I love science. I'm an environmental science guy. Actually in graduate school now, getting my master's in environmental policy and management. And that's, history is another, music, history, just kind of a all around, I try to be all around kind of dude, man. try to be well-rounded.
Yeah, that's sick. The environmental science piece is really cool. What made you want to get into that, aside from the fact that potentially the world needs pretty much everybody to be into that?
Right. Yes, that's true. Like I said, man, I grew up in the Southeast, so I'm a country boy.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up just like meandering around my grandparents' house. You know, they lived out in the countryside, this little city or a little town called Hepzibah, Georgia, and it's just nothing but woods all around. And my grandfather, he kind of indirectly and directly made me appreciate nature, what it could do for you, what it gave you, and what you can give back to it. My grandfather had been composting ever since I could remember. He's been collecting rain in 55-gallon barrels for the longest. Him and my grandmother, they had 1, 2, I want to say 4 around their home, on each corner of the house, basically. They had 55-gallon barrels collecting rainwater, and they'd done that ever since I was a kid. So I grew up around stuff like that. And yeah, man, that just made me, being at my grandparents' house made me appreciate nature, made me appreciate the world and what you could do. It's weird. He built his house on what was an old junkyard. It was an old dump, the city dump. So what he did basically was remediate the land and built his house. He kept farm animals and planted all kinds of, vines. He had a muscadine vine back there. He would make, wine, and, or we would just go back there and eat them. So it was just really cool, man, to just grow up around that. So I think my grandfather and my grandmother, they both had a lot to do with that. And they were very big advocates of education. So I was like, well, shoot, I can go to college and I can study environmental science, and I can still just roam around in the woods, as an adult, and get paid for it. So my grandparents are huge influences.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Yeah. I grew up kind of not really like in the country, but outside of, like, didn't live in the city, didn't live in the suburbs. Like my parents grew up, the road that my parents' house is on is called Field Road, and it's just surrounded by cornfields in every direction. And then where I live currently is like in the north of Canada, or northern, more north of Canada. So like, I mean, currently, like, I'm looking out the window at a lake and forest. Like that's all there is for miles.
I want to be there.
Yeah, it's not the worst place to be stuck, that's for sure.
Oh man.
And okay, so let's that's really cool. Thanks for giving us a little background, and let's talk some sports before we get into coffee. So, baseball fan first and foremost.
I am.
So, who's your team? How do you feel about the prospects of there being a 60-game season?
Oh man, I am heartbroken right now. First of all, I'm a huge baseball fan. That was my first love. I'm a Red Sox fan. So anybody that's a Yankees fan out there, I know they hate my guts, and that's okay. I'm fine with that. And I really don't know what this season is gonna look like. I was watching ESPN the other day, and they had this whole big special about opening day, and I still don't even know what that looks like right now. I don't know how that's going to be played. I don't know if they'll actually open or not, man. So we're just waiting, and I guess we're just going to see how everything unfolds this season. But I'm just ready for some good, clean, and some dirty baseball this season. It's special. This is a special season for me. Personally, again, I'm a huge baseball fan. My grandfather, who I was just talking about, who had a huge influence on me environmentally, he was also a baseball player. He played baseball. He was really well known amongst his friends and his contemporaries for being a baseball player.
Okay.
And he was a big fan of the Negro Leagues. He knew a whole lot about it. And again, like we were talking about offline, I'm wearing one of my favorite Negro Leagues vintage hats, 1944 Memphis Red Sox.
That's so sick.
So yeah, man. And it was made exactly how it was back then. So with the whole wool and the what do you call it? The felt letters and everything.
Yeah.
It feels authentic. So I feel like I could play for them right now. So I'm a huge baseball fan, though, man.
Most of us up here are, and most of my friends that like baseball like the Blue Jays. I mean,
okay,
we're in Canada,
there's
and
nothing
it's
wrong
the
with
only
the Blue
team we
Jays.
got. So it's like basketball. Most Canadians tend to be Raptors fans because we gotta like the teams we got.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, it's kind of when you think about baseball, I think like part of the love of baseball is like going to the park and like being at the game. So it's going to be kind of a bummer that we can't, like, even people, like, I'm not a massive baseball fan, but I love going to Blue Jays games in the summer. Like, it's just so, they got like cheap tickets on Tuesday. You sit in like the 500 level, like way up, like the Skydome's a huge stadium. So you sit like way up in the flipping middle of nowhere, and you just hang out. Like you just hang out with your friends, you chat, you kind of watch the game. Like, it's just a good time. So it's like kind of a bummer that we're not going to have that. But
I know, man. Like that sucks. Like everything is being canceled. Like even my college homecoming, they announced yesterday that it was going to be canceled. So it's like, man, everything is being taken away by this whole pandemic.
That's tough. And then you said you're a football guy as well.
I am.
You mostly college football? You National Football League?
Mostly college. I do watch NFL football. I'm gonna be honest, I don't really have a team. I guess because I'm from the South, everybody, they expect you to be either like a Saints fan or Atlanta Falcons, because I grew up in Georgia.
Right.
But if I would say I was a fan of any team, probably be Carolina Panthers. And then I live in North Carolina now, so yeah, I kinda. But I'm a huge college football fan. Georgia, I'm a Georgia fan all the way. So go Dogs.
Yeah.
And they're actually, well, they have arrived on campus. Mostly they've started workouts already at Georgia. And we're known as Running Back U.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about that. But again, with this whole virus pandemic, thing, I don't even know how that's gonna play out this year, and that's huge for me because I watch if I have to listen to it on the radio, I have to be there at every Georgia game, so that's gonna be hard. I'm a huge Georgia fan, man.
Yeah. If there's like one hope, it's that like there's so much money involved in college football that like they're going to do literally anything to make sure that it happens. So like, I mean, there's a whole bunch of negative things that go along with that, like the politics of it all, but there's like this one positive that they're going to desperately try and make sure it's back. So, take the good.
I think that they will try their best. If they have to play in bubbles, I think that they're going to try to make this thing happen. But I mean, we'll see. I'm gonna try to remain optimistic about it and not so negative. But it's just, if they don't play, man, I will be down. So I have to try to be positive and optimistic about it because I'm a huge Dogs fan, man.
Yeah. Well, I'm a Oregon Ducks fan. My dad went to University of Oregon, so a Pac-12 guy. So I kind of look at the SEC.
Speed University.
Yeah. And then you played rugby, which is super cool. I love like rugby. I got really into it. I lived in Northern Ireland for a couple of years over in the UK. Oh, wow. And got really into it. The coffee shop that I worked at was owned by a couple of professionals there. So what position did you play? How long did you play for?
I played for about 2.5 years at the University of South Carolina. I played hooker or the hook. Sometimes people call it whatever. But I was the guy in the middle of all the props or whatever. So, and when the ball, got up under the scrum, I had to hook it back and try to get it to everybody on my side and keep it on our side. But I enjoyed playing rugby, man. It's a huge fraternity. I actually had the opportunity to play in Australia for a summer, and that right before I left that summer, we were playing, and I knew I shouldn't have did it. I knew I shouldn't have, but I played. What I played was I was A side, B side, and I advanced so much during playing my first year of playing, which was basically the C side, or what they call the Palmetto side,
right
down in the SEC. So the next season I was moved to the B side and the A side, and one of my coaches asked me to play with the C side guys for a game, and I think we were playing either College of Charleston or the Citadel. I think it was the Citadel. And I dislocated my knee, so I never got a chance to go to Australia and play that summer over there. And I was so hyped. I was one of 2 guys from the East Coast to get picked to go over that summer. The other guy was from University of Maryland, and everybody else in the U.S. that got picked were from the Pacific Northwest to go over there. Yeah, so it was only 2 guys. So yeah, man, big time rugby fan. I'm an All Blacks fan, by the way.
Tough not to be.
Yeah, it's super tough. But it wasn't. You know what? For me, it wasn't a hard decision. I had so many guys on my team that I played with. They were Springbok fans.
Yeah.
Then you had some other guys that were fans of the French team. Of course, England. And then you had some Ireland fans. We had a couple of coaches from Ireland. So it was a pretty good mix of guys that had, their favorite teams, but the majority of us probably were New Zealand All Blacks fans.
Right. Yeah, I would be an Ireland fan just by association. So my wife is from Northern Ireland, which is part of the UK, but in the Irish team is like they use players from both Northern Ireland and like the Republic of Ireland. So I got to meet some of the guys who've played for the island side. Just because of the guys that own the coffee shop. So that was always really cool.
That's dope, man.
Yeah, I really like rugby, and I really like the All Blacks. Like, I was doing some research on them just about like what makes them so effective, and it's like just their like leadership and their culture, and just the fact that they're one of the most successful sporting franchises in history
ever.
It's pretty cool to watch. And then like honestly, there's nothing cooler than seeing the haka. That's just one of the coolest things in sports. I don't think there's much cooler than that.
It's so intimidating. Like I remember playing rugby in the SEC, and I don't think anybody did the haka like that. I think everybody had their own thing, but I've seen it before, and I've seen it up close and personal. And there's nothing more intimidating or exhilarating than just being there. And even on video, man, you watch it and you can't help but to get like chills all over when they're performing that. And it's just, and you realize that it's a real thing. Like, it's not just for show for them or for that country. This is for real.
Yeah.
It's really spiritual. And it's tough to play against a team that's as powerful as those guys, man. In any way.
When they first started doing it, they used to say that like the game was won after the haka. Because like the other team was just like, what do we do now?
I can believe it, man, because it's just such a I want to say, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, that must have been something they did in the old days, like before battle, like before war, or something like that. At least that's what I was hearing. So I mean, man, even to know that before you go to battle with some of these guys from over there back in those days, I know their opposition had to been a little bit frightened to hear that somewhere in the distance. So I would have ran.
Yeah. Well, from what I know, there's several different kinds. Most of them are the traditional Maori war dance that they would do before battle, just like you said. But there's a book about the All Blacks called Legacy, which is by James Kerr, which describes where the All Blacks culture came from, why they started doing the haka, all this stuff. It's really interesting. But
wow, I gotta get that book.
It's steeped in their culture. Like they basically use New Zealand culture to create the culture of the All Blacks. So,
Oh wow,
yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's dope.
Okay, let's dive into coffee, because
yes, let's do it.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah, man.
So, Stephen, can you tell me a little bit about your journey in specialty coffee? How did you get into it? Was there like, I find sometimes people have like almost this like aha moment when they have like their first specialty coffee, but also some people have like a gradual transition. So what was your kind of journey?
Man, it was a gradual transition for me. I've been around coffee my whole life. Coffee was like a lot of other people in their families. It's kind of like a rite of passage. When you're a kid, all of the grown people are drinking coffee all over the place.
Yeah.
My mom and my dad, that was their thing in the morning. Even after my parents got divorced, man, it was still like the thing in the house or whatever. That morning ritual, that silence, and now I really understand it as an adult and as a parent. It's that thing that if you can't have anything else in the morning, you got to come in the kitchen, and it's brewing the water, it's boiling the water, or heating the water, not boiling it, but heating the water and grinding the coffee, and just silence throughout the house. That's just how it was. And I used to wake up, and my parents would be in the kitchen. Of course, they weren't grinding any coffee; they were scooping it out of a big red can, Maxwell House, or they were dumping it into a little scoop. I think they drink, what was it? It was orange Sanka. So they did that, and I think I became, in my mind, I became an adult early, because my dad would be like, "Here, let that boy drink some coffee," and my mom be like, "Don't give that to him. He'll be shooting and scooting, and squirting all over the house all day. You don't have to handle that." And my dad be like, just give him a sip. Give him a sip anyway." So after my first sip of coffee as a kid with my mom and my dad early in the mornings, I would do that every single morning. And then I started competing with my brothers and sisters. So we would go to my dad's job after he got out of the Marine Corps. He worked in planning and zoning with the City Planning Commission in Augusta. And so it's maps everywhere, and he had to go out in the field a lot. So he drank a lot of coffee to, be alert. And we would compete in his office with making his coffee, like who had the water to coffee ratio right, the cream and the sugar. He had turbinado sugar everywhere, and he had this hazelnut creamer everywhere. We used to drink the creamer by itself.
Ooh.
And he used to be pissed, because he would come in the office. He'd be like, "Man, y'all drink all my creamer, man." And he was like, "I got to drink my coffee black." And and that was not a thing for him back then. He didn't like drinking just straight black coffee. And as he got older, though, my dad had kind of evolved and started drinking it black. After college, just to make a long story short, after college, me and my wife had our first child, got married. I was working at a college, and I got a part-time job as a barista. And that year, and needless, I was at Starbucks, and this was 2013, 2014, something like that. Gotcha. My first cup of coffee from Starbucks actually was a Kenya. I had never drank coffee from there before. It was because for me, coming from the African American community, it was like a status thing, and it was like, you don't go there. You go to one of the local stops if you want to drink coffee, not Starbucks.
Right.
And which is a weird twist of things, because things got different in all coffee. But they had a Kenya that year, and it was just different from every coffee in there. You had the Verona, you had the Veranda, which is the blonde, or light, what they think is a light roast. You had Komodo and some other coffees, Yukon or something like that. It was some real big beefy bag of coffee. It was just ignorant. And but the Kenya was different that year, and it has not been like that ever since. And that's when I was getting trained actually, and we were just cupping in the cafe. Cafe wasn't even open yet. It was like 4:15 in the morning, 4:25 in the morning.
Whoa!
And we were just cupping. Yeah, man. I was on the first shift, so I was early. Got there early, like 4:10, 4:05 in the morning, and we were just cupping, and it made me appreciate coffee, and it made me even more, and it made me like understand that coffee could be different. It could be so much more different than just grabbing it and chugging it down and going about your day. It could be something that you could truly enjoy outside of home as well. Coffee, the shop could be a third place. And yeah, man, that was my transition into coffee. And then I worked for another specialties, well, kind of specialty, like a second wave type shop.
Okay.
But I did their farmers market booth on the weekends. They paid me $50 a day, so I didn't make any money. And just selling their coffee in air pots and selling their sandwiches. They had really good sandwiches to go with their coffee. And I had a lot of fun doing that. And then we moved to New Jersey, and that's when I think I really, really transitioned into specialty. Moved to South Jersey, which was like a short, maybe 10, 15-minute train ride from Philadelphia. So you have Philadelphia there, and you got Elixir Coffee, you have Rival Brothers, you have Menagerie, Ox, Old City. I mean, you got so many shops just in Center City alone. And I ended up going to Elixir, and that particular day or that particular time they had Ethiopia Arctic Natural, and they were just rocking the Chemex. I didn't see an espresso machine or anything in there. They were just doing straight pour overs. And that was the first time I sat down and had something way different than what I've had ever in my life. Right. And that experience, the way I was treated from the time I walked in until the time that I left, really had a huge impression on me. And I was like, this has got to be where I gotta do this. And that's where it just went up from there.
That's sick. And so did you continue working like as a barista, or were you doing other stuff by that point?
I did not, man. Like, my background, of course, is higher education. That's why I'd worked in higher education before, and in between all of this. And I was actually interviewing for a job. We moved there so my wife could go to Rutgers University. Okay. And that's where she graduated from eventually. And I was trying to get a job as a barista while she was in school. And, we're raising children. She's in school. And I needed to work, but I could not find a job in coffee. And that's where the roadblock, came. I guess people would look at my resume and they would figure this guy's not going to stay in coffee, or he just doesn't look like the average barista or roaster or anybody that works in coffee. Because I wear my shirts with my collars buttoned all the way up. I keep my pants up. I don't skate. You know what I mean? My fingernails are not black. And that's not just every barista, but I just did not. I look like a square, I guess. So, I mean, I just didn't look like, the cool barista people. So I never got hired, and I got fed up with it, and I started my own thing. And I think our first coffee that we ever served was at a church, and it was Creamery from Ruby Coffee Roasters in Nelsonville, Wisconsin. We bought a 5-pound bag of that coffee, and we started doing pour overs on Melita plastic pour overs, and we had the worst brew ratio on earth. It was crazy. And we really did not know what we didn't know what we were doing completely, man. But I mean, we worked the kinks out after a few events. These churches and these people, they kept on inviting us back to pour coffee for them. And we just got better and better and better. And before you know it, we were doing gigs all over South Jersey, mostly churches. And we did one in particular that I was really happy about in Philadelphia at Habitat for Humanity. It was their Christmas party. And I had such a good time serving coffee there for those people. And it just kept getting better. We eventually started roasting for ourselves. There were some things that happened not with Ruby, but there was another company that we kind of like did like a private labeling thing with, or contract. They would, we just bought their coffee and labeled it. And we just got tired of doing that. They would send us coffee and it would be the wrong thing. And I guess, I don't know. And I really don't want to say that that's what they were doing, but it just seemed like it, we would order something like Mexico Chiapas and they would send us Sumatra. And I'm like, I know what Sumatra tastes like. I know what, yeah, this is not the same thing. And every time they did it, we would call them on it and they were like, oh, you know what? Oh, my bad, man. And I'm just like, come on, bro. Y'all gotta know that if we're doing this all the time and we're tasting these coffees all the time, you have to know that we know what we're getting.
Yeah.
So we just severed ties, and my wife took some money from one of her refund checks from school, and she ended up buying a roaster. And we got about 9 or 10 pounds of green coffee with it. And we was like, what are we going to do with this? And we ended up roasting and burning some of it. And man, it just went from there. We started getting better at it. And here we are, man. 3 years later, we're still roasting and still learning. You never know everything about specialty coffee. There's always something new. There's always a different process. Before it was just washed in naturals. Now you got pulp natural and carbonic maceration and
that's my favorite.
All kinds of crazy stuff going on, man. Yeah. So it's fun.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like the coffee industry is still kind of trying to figure itself out, right? In terms of like what we know about coffee and the science behind it and all this kind of stuff. And then you got, I was talking to Kenny Baker from Ethnos Coffee the other day, and him and I were talking about how you almost have these two sides now where like you have some people who treat coffee just as a science. It's like, it has to be exact, you're following graph and it's like, it's got to be the same and repeatable. And then you have some people who are like Kenny would describe himself like more like, this is an art form. Like I treat it like a creative outlet and an art.
It is.
And I think that's like, they're both good. I don't think like one is better than another. Like I like that some people are really into the science and some people are just like, nah, I'm just going to like watch it and like go with my gut and all this kind of stuff. And I think that's the beauty of coffee, is it doesn't have to be one or the other.
Yeah, that is the dopest thing about it. I agree with you on that, man. It doesn't have to, you can't put boundaries on coffee. It can be either or, it could be both. It could be so many things. Like I like both of them. I like the sciencey part, like, taking the TDS of an espresso shot. You know what I mean? Checking that out. I like all the other sciencey things that people do with coffee. Onyx Coffee Labs is one of those places that's like super sciencey, and there's so many other places that are like that. There was one place in New York. They closed down, Alpha Dimension, something like that, but they had a steam pump, and that was really dope. And then you had the Beacon that came out. I don't know which one was first. I don't know if the steam pump was first or Beacon was first, but they kind of operate the same way. And that was really neat to see. And then, like you said, coffee can be treated as an art form, and it's just free flowing and something to get your mind off of every crazy and other negative thing in the world. It's an outlet. It really is. And when I'm stressed, that's I dive into it. I brew coffee in all kinds of different ways. I play around with ratios and grind size, and I just really dig into it, and it just takes me to another place. And that's how, I block out every other negative thing that's going on around me through coffee.
Yeah. For me, it's like, it's that process in the morning of like getting up and, using the hand grinder and trying all the different brew methods and different, like I open up my cupboard and right now there's that, I think 6 bags of coffee.
Jeez.
I just got 2 yesterday. I got the Gucci Man and the Flight of Fancy, and I had 4 already, and I was like, oh man, I might have an issue here. So what's it been like? I guess, like, what's the journey been like as like starting to roast your own and as the coffee enthusiast and trying to create this brand, and you've got your GoFundMe. What's that journey been like?
Oh man, it's been great. It's been hard, I have to be honest, because it seems like it was so long ago, but it wasn't. It was 2016, 2017 when we started, and mid to late 2017 when we started roasting for ourselves. And it was kind of difficult to get information from other guys. Of course, we had a way different machine, a little more 1600 plus, and everybody else, they roasted on like Mill Cities and San Franciscans and Topers, or just another commercial type machine. So, and I know they roasted on like a popcorn popper or a Be More before, but it was still like, I had to get all of the information and the rudiments of roasting coffee on my own. I didn't have anybody that really helped me out. I had one guy, and the relationship didn't really go too well. And I won't say the name of the company not because I hate the guy or anything like that. It's nothing negative towards him. I wish him all the best. He's actually a good food award winner. He can roast his behind off. He's really good at roasting, but it just didn't work between us. Our personalities clashed at some point. But I wanted to learn how to roast from him because he was actually one of the best in South Jersey, and still is one of the best in South Jersey. But it just didn't work out, man. Just didn't work out. And so I didn't get a lot of information from him either. But I started, going to his roasting sessions. He was roasting on, I think, a little Mill City himself. And he was doing it all by himself, so I admired that. He didn't have a whole lot of people helping him out. I understand why now, but I still admired him doing all of this by himself, lugging bags of coffee. That's heavy. 60, 69 kilos, 70 kilos of coffee up some steps, 2 flights of stairs. And I was just like, golly. But, God bless him. But now he's moved, from what I hear, he's moved to a bigger facility. But he was kind of a gatekeeper. And so that was difficult. And so everybody else were gatekeepers. And then the people that were willing to share knowledge were so far away.
Right.
There's one company in particular, I know he would have given me all the knowledge that he could have ever divulged, but he was in Washington. Okay. I think he was in Spokane, Washington. Is what was it? Tom Sawyer's Country Coffee. Really old guy, white guy, but he's been roasting coffee for over 30, 40 years. He has a lot of experience in roasting coffee, and he does roast mostly everything really dark, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't have he has a wealth of knowledge of coffee. He's roasted coffee from everywhere in the world. And I valued that. And I remember he was one of the first people to ever send me like 13 bags of coffee to taste. They all taste the same, but it was just the thought of him doing that meant so much to me. So shout out to Tom Sawyer's Country Coffee in Spokane, Washington, man, for just at least trying to broaden my palate of how coffee should taste after it's roasted.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been part of the journey. Evan from Elixir, he sent me a couple of different coffees and like, this is how this tastes, and this is how that tastes. When you roast a natural and then a washed of the same coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell the difference between that? Come down to the cafe, man. Can you get your Rory that I want you to taste? And it was just stuff like that. But I still I got to broaden my palate, but I still wasn't getting the roasting knowledge that I need. I was like, well, how do you do this?
Right.
How does airflow work? How does drum speed? What does that do? How does that affect the coffee? When should I push heat? When should I back up off the heat? I never really got any of that until I ran into a guy, and I was already a year and a half in. Evermore Coffee Roasters in Burlington, New Jersey. Ryan and he has a wife. I forgot his wife's name. She's so cool. But I think he has a little Mill City in the back of the cafe. And he started actually showing me certain things. And he was like, you can actually translate this to your little B-more.
Right.
You just have to do certain things a little different. Because you don't have this machine, but you can compensate. And I was like, really? So Evermore, I really hold him up in high esteem for actually being one of the first people, to actually start to show me how to roast on a bigger machine, but to try to translate that to a small little B-more 1600, man. And I think that's dope, man.
Right. That's cool. And then the Coffee Enthusiast, where you're at now, what's your goal with your company? Like, do you have a vision? Do you have, something you want to accomplish? Like, what do you see in the future?
What my dream is to run a brick and mortar shop. That's my main goal. Run a brick and mortar shop. And I want that shop to be as environmentally friendly as can be. I want to, do paper reduction. I don't want to use a whole lot of paper products. Since my background is environmental science, my wife's background is public health. So cleanliness, environmentally conscious, reducing our green footprint. That's what I want the shop to be all about, but I want it to be a third place for all people. Yeah. Because I've had some experiences, in coffee that made me not want to go to shops sometimes, and made me feel like that they were third places, but just not a third place for me or people like me. So but I don't want to return that to people. I want everybody, if we ever were blessed to get a brick and mortar location, I want everybody to know and feel when they come in that it's for them. This is for you. Yeah. So man, that's my dream.
That's awesome. And we kind of briefly sort of mentioned this offline, but can you just I guess for me in particular, I've kind of been asking these questions a bit more, but especially as a white male who's worked in coffee, I just don't experience the same things that people of color do, obviously. And so can you tell us a little bit about what your experience has been like as a Black man in a predominantly white owned industry?
Oh man, it's been really tough at times, man. It's lots of gatekeeping, but also having to change kind of who you are to try to fit into, or to make people more comfortable or whatever. But it makes you extremely uncomfortable. So trying to find that space to where you're comfortable in your own skin, including the color, has been quite the ride, man. It's been going into shops and people automatically kind of, scoffing at you when you walk through the door, or people being very condescending when you walk up to the counter and get ready to order your drink, or, like, do you know, what you want to drink? Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, coffee, just like everybody else. But I just want that Ethiopia right there, or I want that Kenya, or I want that Tanzania, or that guat right there. It's been a lot of people being surprised when you walk into a shop and you know what you're talking about. I've had it, and I told our guy from Coffee Black, me and him had a conversation about this. One of the craziest experiences in specialty coffee actually was between me and another Black man. I walked into the shop, and I won't name the shop, but it was in Raleigh, North Carolina. I walked into the shop, and they had a Guatemala on espresso, and I was hype about it. It was a guat, it was a honey process. I was like, oh, I want that. And I walked up to him, and I started asking him about, just different things, not trying to be, pretentious, because that's another thing that I've gotten a lot of. Yeah. Going into specialty coffee shops is so pretentious. And he was the same. He was that. He embodied pretentiousness. And I started talking to him about that, and he looked at me like he had just seen a ghost. And he just outright said it. He was like, I wouldn't think that you would even know anything about that. And he said it with a straight face. There was no laughter. And until I did, I giggled to try to like diffuse the oddness of that situation. And I was just like, wow, this guy actually said that to me. Like, it's been, different with white people. That they're being condescending, that that they're being pretentious, but they don't outright say, like, you don't know what you're talking about, or I don't think you know what you're talking about. He actually said it to me, and I was just like, wow, my brother. So I ordered a long black, Aussie drink, and it was so funny. He didn't know how to make it. So it was a girl. It was funny. It just so happened, and this is no lie, it just so happened to be a young lady in that shop to have just got back from Australia, and she knew how to make that drink. She was like, wow, I have not made one of these in months. And so she was really hyped to make my long black. So yeah, man. But it's been quite the journey, man. Again, lots of gatekeeping. Nobody want to, show you how to do this, or, when it comes to distribution, all the levels of coffee, you don't get, nobody tells you that stuff. Nobody tells you about the guy who, drops out of college, and then he has access to billions of dollars to spend on coffee with a high school education. And then he makes a 6-figure salary as well with no college degree whatsoever, but he's white, and he has access and privilege. And then there's me with the college degree trying to get another one, $200,000 in debt, married with children, and I can't even get a job as a barista. So I have to make my own thing and do my own thing, because I don't look like everybody else. Yeah. So it's been tough, man, but it's been fun. And it's, for me personally, I can't speak for anybody else. For me, even with the racism and the marginalization and the gatekeeping and all the other stuff that you have to deal with as a Black man in this country, just leaving out of your house and going to work, it's kind of scary sometimes. It's not worth walking away from specialty coffee. Like, this is it. I love environmental science, and I will continue to teach, after I finish, my master's degree, but I'm still going to do coffee. Like, this is for me. This is my thing. Yeah. So I'm not going anywhere.
And one of the cool things I think is, like, with the things that you've had to deal with, like, I think some people in specialty coffee take it for granted, because maybe they haven't had to work. Like, for me, I got into a shop, like one of the first ones I applied to when I moved to Northern Ireland. Like, I got incredibly lucky. And there was times where I took it for granted because I didn't have to necessarily work for it. And the more I hear stories, the more I'm like, well, you're just going to do significantly bigger things in coffee because of what you've had to overcome, right? Because your dedication is significantly more than these other people that haven't had to. So I'm pumped to see, I'm going to keep sharing your GoFundMe page for the Coffee Enthusiast.
Oh man,
pumped to get your coffee up at some point. But
man, I hope you get that soon, man.
Yeah, it's getting stuff to Canada. It's flipping ridiculous right now. But I'm pumped to see where you go and what you can do. Cause, just your enthusiasm is contagious. You clearly have an incredible passion for the industry. So you're going to do big things, my man. And I'm pumped to have been able to share a conversation with you and learn a little bit more.
Man.
I guess last question in terms of the main part of our conversation here, but what would you like to see change in the coffee industry? What moving forward? Because we're at a turning point right now. And I think there's a really big opportunity for us as an industry to pivot. So what do you want to see change?
Man, I want to see more genuine togetherness in the coffee industry. I don't want to see separation in the coffee industry. I think that's maybe where I might be a little bit different from everybody. I want to see genuine unity in the coffee industry. I want to see a lot more people of color, namely African Americans. I want to see a lot more of me in the coffee industry. And I want to see a lot more of me in the coffee industry being themselves, whoever they are. You know what I'm saying? Like with Bartholomew Jones at Coffee Black, he is unapologetically himself. He is Maurice Henderson III. And he is Coffee Black. He is A. Bart Jones. You know what I'm saying? And that's who he is. I want to see a lot more Michelle Johnsons and Erica Jacksons. I want to see, Cerinthia's down from Onyx Coffee Labs. I want to see so many others. Oh man, it's his brother from DC. God, I can't remember his name, but he's gone through a lot. He's gone through a cancer diagnosis to remission and still rocking it in specialty coffee. I want to see a lot more Ians from Dead Stock Coffee.
Oh, Dead Stock is dope.
You know what I'm saying? I want to see that. You know what I'm saying? I want to see the difference in opinions and passions. His thing is tennis shoes. You know what I'm saying? Somebody else might be, baseball. Somebody else might be, something else. Our thing is environmentalism and Black culture. Or I love old Black culture. I love the old, 1920s, the 1930s and 40s and 50s of Black culture. I love that stuff. Because that's where resilience was built for our people here in this country. Right. The MLKs, but it was so much more than just MLK. There were so many more women and men that led the way for us. A lot of those women, they're not talked about. You know what I'm saying? They get overshadowed a lot of times by the guys' name. So I want to see a lot more of that in specialty coffee as well. Let these phenomenal women, Black and white, Asian and Latino, let them shine. Stop stealing the shine. I want to see a lot more diversity in coffee, like true diversity. I don't want to see a 35 member board of directors and one Black woman. Yeah. I want to see a 35 member board of directors with, 10 white people, 10 Black people, 10, Latinos. I want to see all of that, man. I want to see a lot more, and I want to see good coffee. I want to taste good coffee. Yeah. That's what I want to see for. That's what I see for the future of specialty coffee.
Yeah. And I have hope that that's where we're headed. Like what I see happening and right now, I think there's an opportunity for the specialty coffee industry to be what it can be and what it should be. So I'm hyped that we've got people like you in it, because that's going to be people like you that are so dedicated. That's going to be what helps push that forward. So, Stephen, I appreciate you taking the time, my man. I know you're busy to come on the podcast. Where can people reach you? Like, what's your Instagram? Where can people donate?
So we have a weird TCE _ a brewing company at Instagram. We're actually on Facebook as well. I'm not on Facebook a whole lot, but I still check that page. Everything that's posted on Instagram goes directly to the Facebook page. But it's the Coffee Enthusiast, the brewing company, on Facebook. They can also go to our website, www.tcecoffee.com. And from there, you can send us messages. You can even give us a phone call if you need to. DM us on Instagram. That's where we're the most active, on Instagram. But yeah, man, that's how they can get in touch with us. That's how they can, go to our website and buy coffee and see what we got going on, man.
Awesome. Unreal. Well, again, thank you. Just pumped to have this conversation. It was great.
Thank you, man.
Really enjoyed having you on, man.
Man, I enjoyed this, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much, Stephen, for agreeing to come on the podcast. That was an awesome conversation. I learned a ton from Stephen, and we talked online right after the episode, just about connecting more and getting to know each other. And when the travel restrictions lift, him coming up to Canada, me going down there. So pumped that this podcast is leading to new friendships and new relationships. And I mean, in reality, that's what coffee and sports should do. Coffee and sports should connect people. And that's what it's doing for me. I'm getting to connect with some incredible human beings. I hope you're getting to connect with some incredible human beings just by listening and going to check these people out and supporting them. I'm going to, in the Instagram post for this episode, there will be a tag for his page. And of course, please go to his GoFundMe and give whatever you can so that his company can get a new roaster and they can start spitting out their amazing coffee in bigger batches. Because the coffee industry needs more Stephen. He's a great guy, and the more he can do, the more power he brings to the industry. Thanks again for listening. Hope you enjoyed that conversation. Hope you feel like you're getting to connect with people, and hope you keep listening. So until next time, we'll see you then.